If you're considering moving into Florida, I'm sure you're probably wondering, where the heck am I going to go? Am I going to go the East Coast, or am I going to be going the West Coast or the Gulf Coast compared to the Atlantic Coast? This is actually a question that my family personally came across when we were first thinking about moving to Florida back in 2020. Ultimately, we decided to choose the Gulf side, and we're up in the Panhandle, so it's a little bit different than like Tampa and all these other areas that are a little further south, but still we are on the Gulf as opposed to being on the Atlantic. And since we are up in the Panhandle, the Pensacola metro area, if you are looking to purchase real estate here, I am a licensed realtor to help you out with all your real estate needs. So let's say by chance you do choose the Pensacola metro area, I am the one to call. You didn't really come here for that though. You came to kind of learn a little bit comparing the Atlantic coast to the Gulf Coast. So let's break into a few things, a few key differences when we are talking about these different coasts within Florida. Before I do that, let's go ahead and look at pretty much the top cities that people are relocating to on the Gulf and then also the Atlantic, and see if these are cities that you're actually currently looking into. And so these stats are all based off of, there's a few different things. So US News and World Report, U-Haul stats, and then also like the US Census Bureau. These are all kind of gauged off of those. And these numbers are based off of 2023 and then also 2024. So the top cities that people are relocating to within the Gulf is going to be Panama City, Tampa Bay, Sarasota, Northport, and Fort Myers. Then if we go over to the Atlantic side, the top cities that people are relocating to are Jacksonville, Daytona Beach, Melbourne, Port St. Lucie, and of course Miami. All right, let's go ahead and dive into that. So those are the top cities based off 2023 and 2024 where people are relocating to on either of the coasts. There were a few others in there that weren't on the coast, so like Orlando was one of the top cities too, but obviously you're not right on the water, so that's why I did not add that city into these stats. The most obvious difference is going to be the difference in water. If you are on the Gulf side, the water is going to be warmer. It does not get as deep as the Atlantic Ocean does, obviously. And then if you're on the Atlantic side, the water is going to be a little bit cooler. It might also be a lot rougher when we're talking about waves. The severity of those waves in the Atlantic is going to be more of a thing as compared to the Gulf side. And so like I said, we live up in the Pensacola metro area, and we have a couple friends who do surf, and they're like, you know what, if you want to be like a top tier surfer, or you really want to surf quite often, this Gulf side isn't really where you want to be. Something else though that we are looking at when we're talking about the Gulf side is red tide. Now if you look up and you just Google it or chat GPT it or whatever you might want to look at, they will say that red tide you do see on the Atlantic side, but it is much more common when we are talking about the Gulf side. Also, when we are talking about the Gulf side, the water does have more of that turquoise and clear tint to it as compared to the Atlantic side. It is going to be a little bit darker. It is going to look a little bit more muddy. It is not going to look as clear. And I mean, we could sit here and throw expectations out there, right? And so if like you look at Miami, like, what are you talking about? Miami has beautiful beaches. Miami has beautiful water. Okay, yeah, you know, they're a little bit further south, but when we're talking about as a whole, comparing the Atlantic to the Gulf, you're just going to have a little bit more of those vacation style waters over on the Gulf side as compared to the Atlantic side. And now that we're kind of talking about that difference in water, how about the difference in the sand or the beaches on the Atlantic side compared to the Gulf side? And I can tell you right off the bat that the Gulf side is definitely, like you said, a little bit more of that sugary, you know, white sand that we are talking about. Now, if you get up into the Emerald Coast where we're at, that's when you really get into that sugary white sand. Why do you think Destin and Panama City are so popular to go to? We have that super fine, sugary white sand where if you're more on the Atlantic side, it is a little bit more of a coarse sand. It is a little bit more of a darker sand. And so it's just kind of all preference. What are you looking for? And I will tell you, when we were really diving into where we want to live within Florida, we went to a lot of places on the Gulf. Ultimately, like we went to the Atlantic, but we figured we wanted to be on the Gulf side. And we toured all the way from like Northport up to Clearwater, Panama City, and then ended up in the Pensacola metro area. There's a huge difference in the sand just from comparing like the Pensacola over to like Clearwater area. We thought when we first saw Clearwater, like, man, these beaches are amazing. And then we went up to Pensacola, like, holy crap, these beaches are top notch. All right, cool. So now we talked about some physical characteristics. Let's compare some home prices. If you are looking at relocating to either side of Florida, what are we looking at with those home prices? And then I'm also going to lay out kind of, okay, this one came in the cheapest, this one came in the highest, this one's appreciating the most year over year as compared to this one, not so much. Before I break into those home prices, guys, though, if you are looking at personal real estate in the Pensacola metro area, we're talking pretty much Pensacola all the way over into Destin, give us a call or text at that phone number right below. Right there, like I said, I am a licensed realtor in the state of Florida, specializing in the Pensacola metro area. But if you're not quite ready to purchase, want to educate yourself on the Pensacola metro a little bit more, make sure you hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up and notification bell. That way you're notified every single time we put out a brand new video. And I'm telling you, if you do want to find out more about the Pensacola metro area, I highly recommend hitting that subscribe button because we talk about the entire area, go super in depth. All right, let's go ahead and talk about those median sales prices. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to cover pretty much the housing prices, the median sales price of the top cities that people are relocating to on the Gulf side, and then we will compare that to the Atlantic side. So first, let's talk about Panama City. So Panama City, your median sales price is $300,000 year over year. That number is actually down 3%. Next, we're going to be moving on to Tampa. Tampa's median sales price is $435,000. That number, though, is up 8.48%. Sarasota, if we're talking about Sarasota, you got a median sales price down there of $525,000, and that one is down just 0.94%. It's not a full percentage point, but it is still down year over year. Then we talk about Northport. Northport, your median sales price is $313,000, and that number is down 8.07%. Last but not least, on the Gulf side, we're going to be talking about Fort Myers. Fort Myers' median sales price is $365,000, and that number is down 2.01% year over year. And I'm also, I know it wasn't in the top cities to relocate to, but after I do the Atlantic side, I'll throw Pensacola's numbers in there too, so we can kind of compare those a little bit, so we can see what the difference is in the median sales price in Pensacola compared to these other cities. Now let's go ahead and hop over to the Atlantic side. Atlantic side, we're talking about Jacksonville. Your median sales price is $305,000. That number is down year over year, 1.61%. Then we talk about Daytona Beach. Daytona Beach, median sales price is $300,000. That number is also down 3.23%. Then we go over to Melbourne. Melbourne's median sales price is $439,000, and that number is also down 4.57%. So far, looking at the majority of these, they are down. Port St. Lucie, you're looking at a median sales price of $399,000. That number, unfortunately, is still down 3.86%. And last but not least, we are talking about Miami. Miami's median sales price comes in at $605,000. That number actually is up 5.22% compared year over year. All right, so if we are looking at this, it looks like the most affordable when we're talking about median sales prices is going to be Panama City tied with Daytona Beach. So you got one on each side. And then if we look at the highest equity gains, that actually goes to Tampa, where they have the highest equity gain. We talked about it of 8.48%, comparing April of 2024 to April of 2025. The most expensive median sales price was the last city, which is going to be Miami, coming in at $605,000. And the city that lost the most equity gains year over year was going to be Northport at 8.07%. All right, so those are the main cities that we talked about that people are relocating to on each of these coasts. But I'm sure you want to know what those Pensacola numbers are. So the Pensacola numbers come in at $268,000 median sales price. That number is also down, though, 7.59%. Now, before I break on to the next subject, real quick note on this is that these are going to compare your single family to your attached products lumped into one number. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about the population of either of these sides. And this is actually one of the big reasons why, personally, we didn't choose. So I'd say, like, one of the top reasons we didn't choose the Atlantic side was the water and the beaches. We just thought that they were so much more beautiful, so much more warmer water over on the Gulf side. Majority of your densely populated metropolitan areas are going to be on the Atlantic side, whereas the Gulf side only has a couple of them. And the majority of those is going to be like your Tampa area, your Sarasota area, where on the other side, you got Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Jacksonville, all these different areas on the Atlantic side that are densely populated. We're trying to get away from that. We came from a densely populated area and we didn't want any part of that, and that's actually why we kind of chose the Pensacola metro area, because it is a little bit more small town with still having all the amenities that you really need to within the area. And then the final thing that I am going to be covering, because I'm sure this is something you're thinking about, is which side gets hit with more hurricanes. And this one actually comes down, and when we are looking at these numbers, these are going to be all the hurricanes that hit Florida within the last 100 years that were either a Cat 3, a Cat 4, or a Cat 5. And if we put those numbers together, the Gulf side over the last 100 years in those categories was directly hit by 11 hurricanes, where if we look over at the Atlantic side, it was hit by 7 hurricanes. So you're looking at it, you're like, all right, cool, the Gulf gets hit more. There is something to the fact that we have warmer and more shallow water on the Gulf side that kind of attracts those hurricanes a little bit more. And so let's kind of go down the list on which hurricanes hit the Gulf side. I just realized I didn't write down the years here though, so I'll just throw the names out there of which hurricanes did hit the Gulf side as compared to the Atlantic side. So if the Gulf side, we are looking at it got hit by Michael, Helene, Ian, Irma, Charlie, Milton, Adalia, Dennis, Wilma, Ian, and Eloise. Eloise. And if we look at the Atlantic side, the hurricanes that hit that side, the 7 of them, were going to be Andrew, Labor Day. I looked at that and I had to make sure I was writing down. I was like, oh, there's a hurricane called Labor Day. I wonder if it hit on Labor Day. Donna, King, Okeechobee. I hope I'm saying that right. Great Miami, and Ann. So you can see that, like, yes, the Gulf side does get hit a little bit more when we are talking about that hurricanes. Us personally, where we live, there's always kind of this rule of thumb that floats around that expect a major hurricane to hit the Pensacola metro area like once every 12 to 15 years, right around there. Now, there was Hurricane Sally that did hit the Pensacola metro area back in, I believe it was 2021, right around there. It was a Cat 2, but due to the severity of the flooding, it was kind of a big deal when we are talking about what happened within the Pensacola metro area. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Hopefully I provided some value in this video. If you do have more interest about the Pensacola metro area, maybe even potentially want to relocate here, give me a call or text at that phone number right below. Right there, like I said, licensed realtor in the state of Florida, helping you out with all your real estate needs. But if you're not quite ready to purchase and you want to educate yourself a little bit more on the Pensacola metro, make sure you smash that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up, notification bell, that way you're notified every single time I put out a brand new video. Until next time, we love you. Bye.